Michael Holloway lived in a world that hardened around him like wet cement. Ever since an earthquake took his hearing at 6 years old, his existence has been defined by a total, motionless quiet. His parents remained distant figures, communicating through cold sticky notes and the sharp smell of chemicals. They worked long hours at Novagen Laboratories, a facility known only for its secrecy and the antiseptic scent that followed them home. Beyond the walls of his house, a separate terror held the city in its grip. People were vanishing from downtown streets and grocery stores, leaving behind a trail of missing persons reports that led nowhere. When the bodies finally began to surface, they carried a signature that shocked the public. Every victim's mouth was found sewn shut with thick black thread, a meticulous, violent silencing that earned the killer the name the Silent Surgeon. In an environment already devoid of sound, the threat of enforced silence took on a specialized, local cruelty. For Michael, the fear wasn't just in the news, it was a physical weight in his chest. Public scrutiny soon turned toward Novagen Laboratories. Protesters gathered at the gates, linking the city's disappearances to the pharmaceutical trials conducted by Michael's parents. Michael's own memories supported the city's fear. He still remembered the first earthquake, when his parents dragged a painting away to reveal a hidden bunker and locked the steel door directly in his face. This dynamic of neglect ended abruptly when Michael turned 18. A sudden accident claimed both his parents, leaving him as the sole owner of a house that felt less like a home and more like a crime scene. He spent the night pacing through empty rooms until he found the unlabeled white capsules his parents had forced him to take for years. He swallowed 4 more than his usual dose, seeking any escape from the numbness. At 2:14 a.m., the second earthquake hit. The house groaned under the pressure. Cabinets crashed to the floor, and the painting in the hallway was finally shaken loose, revealing the same steel door from his childhood. This time, it was unlocked. The passive victim who spent 12 years begging for entry was gone. Michael stepped across the threshold to finally see what his parents had been protecting. Michael descended into a subterranean space that smelled of copper and rot. The sterile upstairs world was replaced by cold concrete and a darkness so thick his phone's flashlight could barely cut through it. At the bottom of the stairs, the beam landed on rows of bodies. Some were skeletal remains, while others were fresh, wrapped in plastic sheets that caught the glare of the light. Every victim wore an oversized gray sweater and beige khakis. Michael looked down at his own clothes. They were an exact match for the uniforms of the dead. The flashlight revealed the final, undeniable connection to the headlines. Every mouth in the bunker was sealed with the same thick black thread used by the Silent Surgeon. Sitting on a stained mattress beside the bodies was Michael's own sewing kit, caked in dried blood. Beside it lay a stack of journals, their pages filled with a handwriting he recognized instantly. The evidence pointed to a single, localized source. The surgeon wasn't a stranger stalking the city streets. The killer had been living directly beneath the floorboards. The journals contained a log of violence and blackouts written in Michael's own hand. Each entry described waking up covered in blood with no memory of how it got there. The medication from Novagen was never intended to heal him. Each pill acted as a chemical wedge, driving a permanent gap between Michael's conscious identity and a second, violent personality he couldn't control. Michael looked at the mattress and the needles, seeing his parents in a new light. They were jailers who had spent 12 years trying to hide a monster from the world, locking him in the basement to contain a son they could no longer recognize. The silence of the house was suddenly replaced by a flood of auditory memories. Michael could hear the screams of each victim and the heavy, muffled breathing of those he had silenced. Desperate to stop the noise that only he could hear, Michael raised a needle to his own face. He began to stitch his own lips shut, seeking the same violent quiet he had forced upon the others, before everything went black. A high-pitched ringing replaced the sound of the earthquake. Michael opened his eyes to a room defined by sterile white walls and the steady, artificial rhythm of a heart monitor. His parents burst through the door, their faces weathered by time, but filled with an intense, weeping relief. They grabbed his hands, shouting names he could finally hear through the fog of his recovery. They explained that he had been in a coma for 12 years, ever since the first earthquake crushed him when he was 6. He was 18 now, waking up to a world that had moved on without him. If the doctors were right, the bunker, the bodies, and the journals were all fabrications of a dormant mind. Every memory of being a serial killer was just the debris of a 12-year nightmare. In this version of reality, Michael was innocent. The blood on his hands was a dream, and the monster in the basement was just a story told by a traumatized brain. However, as the initial shock faded, the hospital room began to reveal its own inconsistencies. On the shelves surrounding his bed sat dozens of handmade dolls his parents claimed he made as a child. Every single one had its mouth sewn shut with the same thick black thread from his nightmare. A television in the corner played a silent news report. The scrolling text confirmed that the silent surgeon was still active in the waking world, with the most recent victim found only days ago. As his mother reached out to comfort him, Michael saw the marks on her hands. Her fingertips were covered in faint puncture scars, and a single loop of black thread was snagged on her skin. The comforting narrative of the coma dream collapsed. Michael was left to wonder if he had finally woken up, or if he had simply been moved to a newer, more elaborate bunker, where his parents were the ones holding the needle.